I don't want somebody to come in and what you just said. I did my cadences, I made my calls, I left my voicemails. You're robotic. The care and the attention to detail diminishes once it just becomes like a button presser. So once you say I got 5 appointments by the right 70 touches, that's what I care about.
When you set lofty goals or goals that seem unimaginable, we hit them because we push towards them harder. We hit bigger goals and we crush expectations that we didn't even think were possible.
It's important to always be thinking of these things from a leadership standpoint, which is, does the processes of my sales org, my revenue org, do they line up with what I most care about, or is there some friction there? Are those things at odds? And then how can we work to change that and evolve that and make sure that's all aligned?
Step right up, the jury's in, the courtroom of sales is set to begin. Truth on trial, hear the gavel groan. Let's lay the facts, don't go it alone.
Welcome back to Under Oath, where revenue takes a stand. If you're new here, Under Oath is the definitive podcast for revenue leaders in the legal industry. We decode the entire revenue engine inside world-class sales teams, vendors, and law firms. From intake to marketing, from leadership and hiring, and the technology that drives it all, we cover it all here on Under Oath. Let's welcome back to defense. First, our fearless leader, SVP of Revenue, Zach Ramey at Rankings. Myself, Scott Knudson, Director of Sales Enablement at Rankings. And, of course, our ringer, Cole Castleberry, VP of Sales at Rankings. Gentlemen, welcome. It's good to have you. Normally, I ask for something to come to the bench before, but, it's my turn to bring something to the bench. I was thinking about today, I ran out of caffeine. I usually get like a case from Costco. And it was like, oh, man. And it got me thinking, either of you have like a go-to beverage. Like every morning, it's like, I got to make sure I have my X or else the day is off.
I'll go first. So I have a very strategic plan for my week, Scott. I know this is going to be very fascinating to both of you that I would have such a plan.
You're not a very meticulous person, so this is strange.
I'm not super consistent in life, so I know this is going to just take you both off guard. But let me walk you through my process. So any day I actually go to the gym and lift is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I'm very meticulous about how I get my calories in. So if I'm lifting that day, I have an energy drink in the morning, which is an Alani. Lonnie every time. And then I will have like a protein shake kind of before the gym. It's kind of how I ensure like lower calories before the gym, but still getting what I need to in to be able to lift. If it's not a lift day, I have I have to have 2 coffees. So point of this story is I have to have ample amount of caffeine throughout every day and have to be very strategic about how it happens.
What about you, Cole? What's your drink of your drink of choice?
See, I'm new to the caffeine world. I did not start drinking coffee until I had a kid. I wasn't anti-coffee. I just never really drank it. Never saw the need. Now
they
do
that to
caffeiner. You got to have your caffeine in the morning. I am not as meticulous as Zach on my choice of the day. It's more so what's available in the fridge. And if that's not an option, there's a coffee shop at the end of my neighborhood that gets frequented by a nice morning walk or a quick drive
and a gas
over.
station.
There is a gas station at the end of my neighborhood that you could also go grab a quick energy drink. But I'm definitely an energy every day type of guy now, or caffeine every day type of guy.
Yeah, I have been energy every morning. For most mornings, I usually a sugar-free Red Bull is kind of my go-to. But lately, I saw some reel, and you know how you just see one reel, you're like, well, this is true. They basically said like you need to drink a bunch of water before you drink caffeine, or it's not as effective. And so now every morning I drink liquid IV, and so I'll make sure to drink as much of that as I can, and then I'll sometimes kind of like drink them all at the same time, and I feel like that's a lot more.
There's a ton of water in my coffee, and a ton of water that gets put in the energy drink. So we get the H2O into it.
Yeah,
also.
it's for sure in there.
It's in there. I'm assured of it. I read the ingredients label. Water's in there.
It's in there, yeah, for sure. All right. Let's get down to business. Court is now in session. We're going to talk about something that's a little bit more in the weeds, and that's around metrics, specifically the metrics that matter. When you're growing a revenue team, a sales team, really any sort of sales function, you need to measure, what your reps are doing. what's successful? What does success look like? And in that process, many of us who've been individual contributors, led teams, and then managed teams, you have to be thinking about this. And the more that you manage, the more you have to be thinking about, okay, what metrics do I need to care about? What have we learned in the space of metrics? What are things that we know now matter, and maybe things that we thought mattered in the past? What are kind of sneaky dark horse metrics that maybe don't get as much coverage or maybe don't get as much talked about as much? And really, what would at this stage as we're growing rankings and what we've seen in our careers, what are the metrics that matter? What really are those leading indicators that lead to success, and what's just noise? So first, before we get into it, we're going to start with what we call our opening statements. This is from the perspective of our roles. So like I said at the top of the episode, I'm in sales enablement. And so from a sales enablement lens, what's something that I've learned in my career, and Zach, as a head of revenue, and Cole as a VP of sales, will do accordingly. My opening statement, really something I've learned in enablement, I think it took me a while to realize this, and it's to measure everything. When you're in sales, that goes without saying. When you're like, oh, this is my number, my dials or whatever. When you move into an enablement role, you kind of start thinking a little more abstractly about like getting content and making sure people are onboarded, right? And you kind of lose a little bit of that like measuring that instinct to measure. And advice that I would give to anybody in the enablement space is to measure as much as you can. How long did it take up until this point for new hires to get onboarded? You should be checking those benchmarks. How long does it take now? What was the biggest deal? How long did it take for the rep to get the first deal? And how big was that deal? Right. And what is it now? Since you've come into the spot, since you've helped enable, right? Every possible thing you can measure, because so much of what you're doing is making sure that you are addressing those points of friction. And so the more that you're able to measure, even if it's not just like the raw dollar amount of revenue brought in, even if that's satisfaction, even if that's the amount of requests that are coming in to fix something, that all that stuff helps tell a good story and is really valuable for you as an enablement leader. Zach, what about you? As far as being a revenue leader, what's something you've learned when it comes to metrics?
Yeah, from my position today, what I've learned is you have to be able to read all the data, right? Like you have to be able to get to the end result that Cole or yourself is presenting to me, right? Like that you're getting, at the end of the day, you want to be able to trust your people and trust the data behind things. But what we've learned, in my position over the last 18 months at rankings, is some data it's easy to get skewed, right? It's difficult to get clean data, and everybody can be thinking it is accurate when in reality one thing is off, and that messed up months of data, and you're reading off just one number. So one thing I've learned is, especially the higher you go, don't ever lose sight of how to figure out the data as well, right? Just don't take it for face value when it comes to you. Like you should be able to backtrack, because at the end of the day, Cole runs sales every single day and he's in it. Like, a lot of times he's got blinders on, right? Like you're going at sales. And when somebody else can come in and look at it, oh, like that's broke, right? Wonder why that's happening. He's like, didn't even see that, right?
Yeah.
Like because you're so in it, and that's just normal. That happens in every position. But what I've learned as a leader, leading leaders or departments, is if you don't know how to step inside that department and truly be able to pull the data and be able to understand why that does look funny. It's not just, I want to take that for face value every single time. You want to, and you always want to be proven that, hey, your leader's right. That data was correct, but you also need to be able to say, that might look a little funny. Let's rerun that. And then that puts you in a lot better position going forward, and it makes your leaders better. It makes yourself better.
Yeah, I really like this idea of it can be really tempting and really easy to just become strangers to that world that you were a part of. Like you were a frontline manager and now you're managing frontline managers and you forgot how to run that report. Or maybe you joined an org at that top level and you're just not really familiar with the nuances of it. So making sure that you can step in and see what they see and maybe see some things that they don't see from your landscape. Cole, what about you? You manage a bunch of sellers and frontline sellers and some managers. What's something you've learned as somebody who's probably the most in the trenches?
Yeah. I'm glad I get to follow up Zach here because I think it's a perfect segue, which is dirty metrics or dirty data impacts your growth. Not having a focus on being very meticulous with clean data or clean metrics or owning those metrics day in, day out will impact the decisions you're going to make in 6 months as you look to bring on more hires, or you look to add a new product, or you're looking to see whether someone's actually capable within a role. If you can't look back at reporting and metrics and be able to measure that, you can't make accurate decisions. So one of the things that I've really learned is the importance of daily measuring metrics and making sure that those stay clean, and so you can make the best decisions going forward.
Yeah, those things tend to kind of pile up on each other, right? If you can get the daily stuff right, odds are your weekly and your monthly and your quarterly stuff is going to be closer to right. Sometimes we get a little more retroactive and we're like, I'll fix it later. Or like, you hand wave it, and then you get to the end of the month, you're like, oh, wait, shoot. There was actually a bunch more stuff there that I just didn't mark, but I promise it's there, and it gets all tangled and messy. At this point of the episode, we're going to move into the cross-examination stage. So this stage, I've got some questions here around metrics, so I'm going to be kind of examining Zach and Cole and trying to get some juicy insights for the listeners here. So let's start with you, Zach. You talked a little bit about you want to make sure the data is right. There's a subtext there that sometimes data can be misleading. What are some of those metrics, or if you have one in particular where it tends to be a misleading metric that people can maybe be a little bit too confident in and maybe unwisely or irrationally make a decision off of?
Yeah. So going back through kind of my career and being at other companies, you always hear, I'm going to go to like a big button that people talk about is touch points, right? For prospecting. And everybody that I've been around in the past have looked at touch points as an indicator of how long it takes to get a prospect. It's right.
It's got to be 7 touch points, 12 touch points, 15 touch points.
Your average person, you don't get on the call until number 11, right? 3 calls, 3 texts, like all these things you have to do. And I have come to find out, and that's why we have made our way at ranking so much different, is it's not really as much about the touch point number in my mind. It's how you're doing the touch points, right? And we talked about experience in one of our prior episodes, and that goes in to the touch points for me. So that's just a small kind of glimpse of something in the past that has been it's just going to take 11 touch points, 12 touch points, getting your cadence. It's because it's very robotic. That's why it's taking so long to get somebody's attention. It's because you're not making it personalized. So that is just a small thing that I have found, that a lot of times that what everybody else thinks is a number you should be looking at, it's just because they're doing it in a way that isn't super effective. So it's taking so much more. So I feel like it's a number that people chase.
Yeah, I think it's easy to be like, oh, I'm working my accounts. I'm working my deals. Look at all my touch points, right?
Exactly.
And I think what we've found, and I think you called this out, which is, okay, you can have 15 mediocre to bad touch points, but they're touch points, or you can have 3 really great touch points. And on that third touch point, you've put in all this effort and energy and exchange value. And they're like, of course, why wouldn't I meet with you? Right. We'll take that every day.
For me, we've actually had a lot of slack on this the past few weeks, and it's because we don't run cadences here at Rankings. And the reason why is because I think that is an automated, unpersonalized way of doing things. And it's not that I don't think it has its place in certain, rhythms, but for the most part, I don't see it because I don't want somebody to come in and what you just said. I did 300 touches last week, right? came in, I did my cadences, I made my calls, I left my voicemails. You're robotic. Like the care and the attention to detail diminishes with that once it just becomes like a button presser, right? And I think those are vanity numbers at the end of the day. I don't want you to come to me at the end of the week and say, I did 300 touch points. I want you to say I got 5 appointments by the right 70 touches, right? Yeah. That's what I care about.
Cole, this question's for you, and it kind of dovetails. I imagine in your role, there have been times and seasons where you might have obsessed over a certain number that you're like, I got to make sure these numbers are really high at this certain rate or whatever. Do you have any examples of a metric that you used to kind of hyper focus on that maybe now you just don't really care about as much? It's lower priority. Walk us through that evolution.
An indirect answer to your question is a metric that I used to obsess about in a different way that I now obsess about in another way.
There we go. Sure, I'll take that.
If I could go down that route, which is your target numbers, right? I think there's this level of expectation or level of anticipation of what's reality, and that's where people set their number, right? And in our world, we've really set really lofty expectations for all of ourselves, for our AEs, for our BDRs, for what we're able to bring to the table. Some numbers that might even seem unattainable. When in reality, you might set I would have set my numbers to an obtainable amount. That's like, I know you're going to get there and you're going to crush it. You're going to be above goal. Now I want to push people to think further and bigger numbers. And what I found when you set lofty goals or goals that seem unimaginable, we hit them because we push towards them harder and we hit bigger goals and we crush expectations that we didn't even think were possible. I have an analogy that I was thinking on about this, which is when I go to the gym, a trainer that I use tell me, do 12 push-ups. I go do 12 push-ups. They'll say, do however many push-ups you can. I'll do 30 push-ups, 40 push-ups, but if you tell me a number, that's where my body thinks I'm done, right? I get to 12 and I'm like, that's all I had. But if you just tell me to go, I can do far further than what I think. So I think it's the same way when we're setting goals. As I used to think about, when I set a number, let's make it obtainable and reachable and what we're going to get. I know we can get to $100,000 this month. Now I don't think that way. I think, what's the biggest number that we can put out there, and let's go for that number, right? It's still within reason, but it's pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible. And I've surprised myself, and AEs have surprised themselves, and BDRs have surprised themselves by shooting for something that's unattainable. You rarely don't miss that because you push harder and you think differently. So a number I used to obsess about is just elevating what you think is possible, and I think you'll go a lot further.
One thing that is going unsaid in what Cole is saying too is that type of mentality changes a culture.
100%.
Because it's no longer expected. We're very transparent here, and we'll give our exact numbers of how ours happened. The day I started in October of 2023, Rankings was averaging a little over $600,000 a month in ARR closed, right? We said after we started that we wanted to get to $1 million a month in ARR. We got looked at sideways by people that was going to be tough. And we set the standard, we're going to bring in the appointments. We're going to get we started hitting that. Then fast forward 18 months later, our goal now is $600,000 in ARR closed a week, right? Yeah. And we hit that regularly. So, but guess what the standard is? We're going to move that. Every time we're going to move it. And to what Cole was saying, that is how you change a culture. That is how you change the numbers people are going after, because when we hit it, we hit it. We hit everything we set out to do, right? And then when you do these lofty numbers, it doesn't feel so lofty anymore. It's like, of course we're going to hit that. Of course we're going to get there. Or if we're not getting there, how can I as the employee change that? I know there's something I can do to help us get there. Now you got everybody fighting towards the same goal and wanting to be the best at what they do. So there's a lot mixed up in just this metric number.
Yeah. Yeah. And you might think that you must have tripled the sales team, right? It's like, well, we went from 2 sellers to 3 sellers, right? We added more BDRs and more revenue engine, right? Stuff to bring in stuff, but that was not tripling the sales team or adding 10 bodies and throwing at a problem. We said, no, we think these guys can output more. We think we can put way more fuel on the fire. We think we can get them more appointments. We can get more inbound, outbound, all across the board.
Well, we started looking at metrics, Scott, right?
Right.
We started looking at how many appointments these AEs were taking that were spam. They were having to filter their own stuff, right? Like at the end of the day, they had the time to take on more quality appointments. That was in the metrics. It was, how did you pull those numbers out of it to give them the right people? And again, it all goes into the numbers that you're looking at, the right numbers. Because if anybody else would have looked at the other side, our AEs are busy. Right? They got 8 appointments a day.
Yeah.
So that's how you can skew your metrics, is looking at those numbers being like, oh man, they're so packed, we need to hire more AEs. No, you need to clean up their days and give them more of their right appointments, then go hire more AEs.
That's right. Yeah, this all reminds me also, there's the Roger Bannister anecdote. If you're unfamiliar, for a long time, no one had run a mile under 4 minutes, and it was just like, yeah, you just can't do it. And so just nobody could do it, right? So Roger Bannister's like, no, I'm going to do it. And so he just goes and goes and goes. And then he breaks it one year. And then the next year, like 12 people break it. And now it's like everybody breaks it, right? And all it took culturally was one person be like, that's attainable. I can do that. And everyone moves up, right? And so all these things start to stack on top of each other, where it's like, hey, if I love what you said, Cole, like, yeah, I could go for, something attainable. But odds are, if you shoot quite a bit higher, you will not only get that attainable thing.
What's the analogy? Shoot for the moon, land in the stars.
That's right.
Right? Like,
yeah.
Or vice versa. Shoot for the stars, land on the moon.
I mean, whatever it is, like, you want those lofty goals, right? Like you want to try to overshoot it. Hey, and guess what? Sometimes you might just touch it, and then your bank account gets bigger and the company does better. Like, so many things follow behind that. And what a lot of people I don't think understand is, when you raise your metrics, raise your standards, raise your numbers, that doesn't just start happening at work. That transitions into life, right? In your home, how you manage your wife, your husband, your kids. Like, you expect more. That isn't something that's not a switch you get to flip on and off, right? That just becomes a personality trait.
Yeah, I'm actually going to argue with that statement. I know it's a long time used statement, shoot for the stars, land on the moon, but I think it's shoot for the stars, land on the stars. And that's really our mentality, is when we put something out there, we hit it. And that's how everyone feels, because we're not looking at the moon, we're looking at the stars. And that analogy, and I think that carries a lot of weight when you're assigning metrics or looking at metrics. It's not about shooting higher to land lower. It's about shooting higher to land higher. So
how do you find that balance, right? Do you take an approach where you say, hey, I'm just going to find the 3 or 4 most important metrics and really just focus on those, and the other ones will fix themselves? Or do you take more of a, hey, I'm going to, whatever is in my capacity to measure from metrics, I'm just going to look at everything? What's an approach that you guys take that you find to be the more effective one?
I'm sure everybody's heard the saying, don't get lost in the sauce. That is a huge thing that is easy to do when looking at metrics. There's such a fine line to ride when you're trying to pinpoint what you want to do. For me personally, I want to start measuring things that end up making money, right? I mean, revenue. It's what matters the absolute most. In each department, that is going to look different for me, because I'm looking at sales, I'm looking at marketing, I'm looking at events, I'm looking at a conference. All those bring in money in different capacities. But let's hone in on sales. You always want to start with the few metrics that lead to your key indicators of making money, right? So for us, let's go from just an outbound perspective. You want to look at how many dials, right, it's taking to get to an appointment. Are we doing those personalized? Are we sending out gifts? Like, there's very minute things that you want to start looking at, but I don't want to look at 100 things, right? I want to look at a few things and what's taking to get to the appointment. Because in the day, we care about the appointment, a quality appointment. And for me, I think people can just get caught up in so many other avenues rather than their North Star. We'll piggyback on shooting for the stars. Whatever their North Star is. And our North Star in sales is a qualified appointment, right? And I don't want Cole looking at 100 different metrics to find those appointments. What are the ones that mean the most, and then start adding to it, right? Because if you gauge 100 different things, Cole can probably tell you about it, you're going to find ones that make you mad. Like, it's just all metrics aren't going to make you happy. Yeah, so you're going to be able to find flaws in something every time.
I think this is where it becomes really helpful to, we'll call it diversify measurement in your metrics, right? Where you say, hey, Zach at the top, here's, when I report to in War Room, when I report to Chris, like, here are the questions he's asking, here are the things that I need to know about. Some of that stuff that you can go in and make sure that you have clear visibility on from a metric standpoint, right? But some of it takes a little bit more digging, takes a little more research. And so you say, hey, Cole, I need to make sure that these things are accurate. And so what goes into that, Cole, you might be looking at, less things at the very top, but more focus on these particular important metrics, right? Your lens into what you're measuring is going to be different. Same with me in enablement, right? Like I'm looking at it from a different lens so that those metrics as they roll up to Zach that he reports on and helps make decisions on, he can trust that all his leaders are putting in the requisite metric analysis so that he can make informed decisions.
You have to be able to gauge which ones are the most important to talk about to your team right down the line. Because if you have a team of 15 BDRs who think 30 different metrics are important, best of luck to you.
Yeah.
Right. Like you have to be able to say, these are the 3, 4, whatever most important things. The job gets done if these get done. Cole on the backside can be looking at 30 different metrics. But to the team, he has to talk about the 3 impactful ones that they're chasing, or otherwise you're going to have a team of BDRs lost in the sauce, and they're going to be started getting pissed off. They're not going to be able to get the job done, and quite frankly, good luck to your culture after that. Because now in this regard, rankings want so much of us. I can't get all these things done. This metric goes up, this one goes down. Pinpoint the ones that are important, and that's what you as a leader should talk about, whether you're looking at more behind the scenes or not.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And that's honestly how I'd answer this question is when I look at metrics, I look at a lot of things, but ultimately what's most important to me in the sales aspect is what's driving sales, right? Number of appointments, the show rates, the close rates of these appointments, what dollar and cents we're positioning on calls to increase our average client value. Those are the numbers that I focus on, the ones that we talk about as a team, the ones that make sense to converse about on sales huddles. It's the ones that move the metrics financially for us as a company. I'm in sales. That's where our focus is. My dashboard has 30 different reports on it though, right? But we don't break down 30 different reports. It's important for me to understand the bigger picture, but Zach said it best. How we communicate and what we focus on a team level is very granular to what's going to impact them and their roles, and they have a clear target to run towards and know exactly what's expected of them.
I think this ultimately blends into how you structure your sales team, how you commission your sellers, the processes that you change, right? That's something that I think about a lot, which is, all right, we've established these core metrics. What is stopping our sellers? What is preventing them from hitting them more frequently, right? Is it they are frustrated with the data? Is it they don't have enough context? Is it they don't feel like there's fairness in the books? Is it they feel like they're being disincentivized from a comp standpoint, right? Like, they're getting paid on sets, so they just focus on sets, right? It's important to always be thinking of these things from a leadership standpoint, which is, does the processes of my sales org, my revenue org, do they line up with what I most care about, or is there some friction there? Are those things at odds? And then how can we work to change that and evolve that and make sure that's all aligned?
I think it's a great point, Scott, is aligning metrics with pay, because so often people wonder why. And I think the perfect analogy for this, the perfect example would be outbound sets, right? Do you at your company pay for a set, or do you pay for a show, right? Because the metric matters for the show. And internally, that's what you're going to be talking about. How many people showed to the appointment? You're going to be looking at the show rate. But if you look back and say, oh, we pay for every set, not every show, right? Like your team, you're going to be wondering why there's junk appointments coming through. It's because you're paying them on the set.
Right. Even if it's less, they're like, I'll get 100 people at a company.
Correct. I just have to get them to agree on a phone call. Yeah. And if they show, it's not my problem. Right. So again, aligning your metrics to how you feed your people, right, through money. And those all have to align properly.
Perfect. All right. This is going to transition well into our objection part of the show. This is where we take a modern convention, something that maybe is understood as a standard or status quo, and we object to it. Cole, I want to start with you on your objection. What's something when it comes to metrics that other people might take for granted or just believe is this is the way that it is? What's something you object to?
I think there's this common sentiment that all metrics matter, and where I'm going with this is all metrics are important to understand, but they don't matter on a day-to-day day-to-day basis, right? What's most important are the metrics that actually move the needle in the organization that you're in, right? Scott, you focus on different metrics than me. While my metrics are important to you, your team's metrics are not my metrics. So what we focus on is dollars and cents metrics, what's going to move the needle for the company financially. It's important for me to know what marketing MQLs are coming in and things like that. But from an AE level, what's most important to them is appointments on their calendar, show rates, closing percentages, client ACV. That's what we focus on. So the thought of, I have to understand everything. I have to know all the metrics. I have to see all the data to be efficient in the role. I object to that. I think you should be hyper-focused with your team on exactly what they should expect.
I think that's another great area where, again, you have these clear swim lanes where you say, okay, here are the things they need to get. What's stopping you from getting them, right? And you can say like, oh, I don't feel like I have a strong enough territory. Can we analyze that? I get these people on the phone, they're not interested. I'm not able to reach my ICP. I don't have the tools to convert them or whatever, right? Is it a close rate problem? Is it a patch problem? Is it a market fit problem, right? There's just all these other potential solutions and ways to go about it, right? But ultimately, like, you as a seller or whatever, like, you should be thinking about those clear swim lanes and what's preventing you from that. It's not how, as an AE, how do I get more MQLs? It's like they should be focused on that, right? But those things all kind of will bleed over into these same, established, like, these are the things that are important. How do we work back from those things? So I think you're dead on.
Absolutely.
What's something that you object to when it comes to metrics?
I think one thing I object to when it comes to metrics is a lot of times in my past companies, I've heard, go figure it out, right? Go figure out the data. Go look at it. What if I don't know how to read data? I know Cole and I work together as AEs. We got told so many times to go figure out your own stuff. And what I object to on that is, we've talked about a lot on these episodes, is go invest and let an expert be an expert in how to get data, how to clean data. And we have found out here, paying the right money for the right people to clean our data, build our systems, Scott, you being one of them, moves the company forward. We make more money because of that. And in the past, I've just seen so many people say, go figure it out. Like, you should not have to figure out your own numbers. You should be told what those are. Right. I should be able to show you how many calls you're making, how long it took you to get there. It might be your job to figure out why that's happening, and then us help you listen to your calls or look at the emails you're sending or the personalization you're doing. But it's a company's job to show you the number, not you go figure it out on your own.
Yeah. I think back to when we kind of first started this revenue org, at least starting the outbound motion. Everybody was on a pipe drive, this CRM, and for what it was, for the small sales team, it was like, yeah, it shows our numbers, we're able to track our pipeline, it's great. And ultimately, it's like, okay, well, if we want to grow and have meaningful insights into what an outbound motion is going to do, track their calls, track leads, build territories, do these kind of things, it just wasn't really set up for that, right? And so we had to say, all right, well, in order for us to grow meaningfully, we need to come in and we need to structure it in such a way that we can measure these things out of the gate. And that's something I know you talk about a lot, Zach. It's like thinking a year or 2 years, advance. As we grow, we knew we were going to have to track these other aspects, even though they weren't built out yet. We knew we were going to have to build, track win rates in a meaningful way. That just didn't exist in the system that we had, right? And so, I think you're dead on, where it's like, you should be thinking about what are those pieces you can invest in so that you don't have to put the onus on your sellers. So like, hey, just figure out what works and do that. It's like, no, we know what works. We've invested in people who can figure out what it works. And then we've invested in resources to make sure they continue to know how it works. And in some cases, we invested in outside resources to improve that so that they know it works, right? And like, you should be, as a leader, I think, always be looking at, like, how can I make the team that I have even better? And do I need to bring in some external force to make it better? Do I need a better tool to make it better? Right? Do I need to bring in, is it a culture thing to make it better? Like, you should just always be in that mindset, right?
I think that's where a lot of companies fail, is that they're just too slow to pivot, too slow to say we messed up, too slow to say we need more. And I think that's why a lot of companies just end up dying, right? At the end of the day, they may think it's a metric, but we'll go find out, right?
Yeah.
Go pay the money, figure it out. If it's not, pivot, move on. time is money in business. And the longer you wait to address a problem, more problems are going to follow right behind it. And we know too well, but business doesn't stop. Every day there's something new. And data is data is the most lucrative thing in the world right now to be able to get. And if you're not getting it for your own company and making sure it's clean and presenting that to your people and showing them their data from a personal level, good luck.
Yeah, 100%. My objection, there is sometimes this attitude of metrics they kind of trump everything. You could have a really awful rep with a terrible attitude, who's a lone wolf, who doesn't care about anybody else, doesn't want to contribute, but boy, does he hit his number, right? I think it's a dangerous place to be. We say, hey, like they're bringing in money. Why, let's just let that situation roll. I think that metrics, as insofar as they are married to things like attitude and other kind of sales virtues, those are what matter, right? If you have somebody who is, they can close one huge deal a month and not do anything else, right? Hey, they're hitting their number. That should be all that matters. And it's like, no, that's actually not what we want, because that's not really sustainable long term, right? In the moment, it might seem like, hey, like they're our best seller, like we gotta hang on to them. You don't actually. You should be thinking about, okay, when our number eventually goes up, as we add more services, is this the kind of culture that we want? As somebody who views the selling this way, or do we want somebody who's saying, I want to win more deals, I want to collaborate, I want to be part of the system, I want to lead from within, right? And those, to me, I think need to be married with the metrics, right? Sometimes you can find people kind of too far in the other direction, where like they just want to be a leader and they want to be a culture ad, and that's it, right? They can't actually deliver the numbers. You need to find both, and that's hard. Hiring somebody who can both bring the metrics and help contribute to the culture. But that's part of the job. And that's really, I think, one of the more important things that leaders do is they say, okay, I'm going to find people who can do this. I'm going to create people who can do this. And the people who cannot do this, I will work those people out so they can go do something else, right?
I think that's a great point, that metrics aren't the only source of truth, right? If you could look on paper and somebody's crushing their number, but if they're lying to the prospect on every call, I'm over-promising them, metrics show that they're doing great. I'm only looking at the metrics. They're closing everything, right? And it's like, they're lying on the other side to get there. So I love that. Metrics aren't the only source of truth. That's a good one.
Scott, I'll add something too. You said you want leaders that, understand the metrics, run after them, right? Like they also want to buy leaders a little crazy. Right? I want you to have that look. You know how let me tell you how crazy Cole is, and it's what I love about him as my VP of sales. Is when we were doing $600,000 a month when we first started, he was like, we'd hit it. He'd say, "Man, we're not even good yet." We had our best month ever in April, over $2 million. He said, "We're not even good yet." Right? So you're talking a $1.4+ million difference in monthly, and it's been the same sentiment. We're not even good yet. And that's kind of crazy you want in your leaders is it's never going to be good enough, right? We're chasing perfection. We're chasing the most money possible. And I promise you, at the end of each month, you can look back and say you missed the boat some places, right? The data is going to tell you that. The metrics are going to tell you that. But you need the leader in place that can cheer for it, but also tell you we can get better. We're not even good yet. And that's where the secret lies.
There's this balance where it's like you need to be able to set a high standard, hold people to high expectations, but also understand how to work with people and how to coach people and make people loyal to you. And that's something that we know firsthand that you are great at, right? So you found that sweet balance. So often, again, just like sellers, it's kind of, you see this one or the other. You have the person, all they care about, why aren't you at your dials? What are you doing? Butts and seats. I don't care what it takes, right? And they're not actually leading anybody to anything. And then you have other people who are like, hey, just try your best. Like, we're all just having fun here. Like you're a good person. I'm a good person. We're doing great. Right. That balance is a tough one. And it's what makes the job hard, but it's what makes great leaders, as they find that sweet spot, right? That Goldilocks zone.
Just a little crazy and a little obsessed to get you a long ways.
Yeah. I'll wear that hat all day, and I'll say it again. We're not even good yet. So I'm excited what's to come. What's
a closing thought, Zach, that you'd leave with the listeners?
Be smart enough to know if you're only presenting vanity numbers, because your job's going to be in jeopardy. I've been around so many leaders that you can tell when they finagled the numbers to present, to show. And at the end of the day, if you know that's happening, go figure out why. From my seat, being able to go look and find those things is obviously a huge point we talked about in the beginning, but it starts with the leader presenting it. And I've been there. You all have been there. We all are there presenting to other people. Know how to read it. Tell the truth about your numbers to when you're presenting to your people, good or bad, because that helps you get money to make decisions or make changes. When you present vanity numbers, it makes people think that you're doing well when it's not, and you're not going to get the resources you need to fix it.
Always be measuring. Look for areas that you can measure, right? It's not that you necessarily need to obsess about every metric that exists, but you should be looking for things that you can measure. If you're measuring dials, you're like, well, what about conversations? What about conversations longer than a minute? Right? What about, how many conversations up until it gets to set, right? You should be thinking this way. You may get to a dead end and be like, this doesn't correlate to anything, right? But it gets you in this headspace of measuring only uncovers data, and data can lead to good change, right? And it can make informed decisions. And so it can help counteract this, like, well, is this just vanity? It's not a perfect crystal ball. You don't totally know everything, but the more that you measure, the more that you're willing to measure, the more that you can get to the truth of what you can actually act on.
And please learn to be able to sift through it.
Yeah. It's a process. Cole, what about you?
Yeah, I said this earlier, but I'm doubling down on it, which is out with the old statement, shoot for the stars, land on the moon. It's shoot for the stars, land on the stars, put it on a bumper sticker. I'm ordering one for everyone.
I love it.
You set goals that are unattainable, and you hit those goals and you push towards them. I don't like the ideal of I'm setting myself up for a higher standard to fail. I set myself up for that standard. I'm gonna go get it, and I'm gonna find my way there. So shoot for the stars, land on the stars.
Love it. Okay. Thanks again for listening to Under Oath. If you want to give us some love, share us on LinkedIn, rate us on iTunes, on Spotify, wherever you watch us or listen to us. That's going to do it for Under Oath today. Court is now adjourned.